Okay. I know we just finished rebuilding those wheels, and it's definitely not a couple days later. I don't know why you would even think that. I brought the engine inside, blew the bottom end apart real quick, because my cam chain got stuck in the bearing cap for the crankshaft. So couldn't get that back out, took it all apart, and then I figured while I was in there, may as well just go through with a mic and a set of calipers and dial bore gauges and whatnot, and just make sure everything is within wear specs that are prescribed by Honda. Turns out they are, so now it's time to just put this thing back together. Let's move it again. Oh yeah. That'll be nice. Plenty of space to work with. Nice and clean. So I think the first thing I'm going to do here is get the transmission put back in place. We've got to get our primary and our output shaft just kind of set back in here. We've got our little bearing retaining clips already stuck in, cleaned up nicely. And then we've got these weird little dowels. I guess they're like alignment pins or something for one end of each of these shafts bearings. So it should be pretty quick and simple just to drop this thing back in here. Let's see how wrong I am. Get! Gotta make sure our little shift forks line up actually. Ooh, that pretty much falls right into place, right there and right there. Okay, so it'll line up this little alignment hole with the pin underneath and then make sure it all sits down onto the shift fork. Ooh, and all those gears accidentally meshed just right away. There it is. Okay. Oh my, this is quite heavy. Make sure I've got this alignment pin kind of facing down. The crankshaft can only go in one direction because the bearings are different sizes on either side. Give that a little rotate. Huh? Nothing? Hey! We've got another little gap right here for an alignment pin, kind of like we have here in our center bearings, but there's no hole or anything drilled in this bearing, so I don't know what the deal is there. And I'm not gonna ask questions. Let's see if we can get this bearing slid over and into place, and down and into place. Yes. Ah, cam chain. Right, that makes sense. I told you all this was just a test to make sure that this is gonna fit. It fits. Now let's unfit it. You know, I guess we just do this here. Okay, we'll set it down inside here kind of gently. Rotate. That alignment pin is in place. That one's in place. This one's in place. Yes. Okay. Now, the whole reason we tore this thing apart to begin with, right there. Cool. So far, everything is as it should be. Guess I may as well go ahead and get this little clutch push rod dealy seal in place. We'll tap that into place a little bit further. So we're going back in with all fresh gaskets. We've got fresh oil seals everywhere. I want this to be a good running little engine. I want it to last a long time just the way it is. When I took this apart, I made a little paint mark on the case half and then on the bearing cap as well, just to put this back exactly the way it came out. I've got some ultra slick over here, and I'll certainly use this with a lot of the top end stuff. But I'm a huge fan of just picking the oil that you're going to use in here, sticking it in a little eyedropper. And as far as like pre-lube and stuff, just use the oil you're about to run in the machine anyway. Makes sense to me to do it that way. But you know, what do I know? This time, we're going to make sure that that cam chain doesn't fall through one of these little oil passages, because I don't want to take this apart again. Not anytime soon. Going way on up here. Honda calls for a spec between like 14.5 to 17 foot-pounds. So I think we'll go about 16 foot-pounds on these guys here. The same applies for these 4 main bolts as well. Dang, man. Little aluminum parts are sharp. Beautiful. That's everything there. We've got the Kickstarter already in the bottom end. I say bottom end. This is all bottom end, but in the bottom half of the bottom end, Kickstarter. Yeah. Kickstarter is in place. Dogs, man. Little bits of dog hair. It's just expected. Oh, well, not a big deal. I'm really surprised how nice everything looks in here, given that the engine just sat locked up for a very long time. I did find out an interesting piece of information. This motorcycle was parked in 1974. So I said it's been off the road for a decade, or 2.5 decades. Turns out it's been quite a bit more than that. We're gonna go ahead and get our Honda Bond all laid out nicely. Just a thin coat is what's called for here. We do really want these halves to sandwich together nicely. Gonna try and kind of smear off some of the excess. Hang on, I've gotta scoot you back here. Woo! Get you back in focus a little bit. All right. I'm gonna let this tack up for just a couple of minutes here. Clean out a couple of these passages that aren't really passages, just bolts go through them. It's not really a big deal, but keep it all as tidy as possible. All right, we'll set this on top of here and go from there. I want to get this right on the dowels. Okay, nailed it. Oh, and nailed it. Okay. What's the catch? I know this is still filthy, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. When it gets back in the bike, I can go and wash it a little bit further. I made the mistake of not really cleaning this thing super well before I pulled it out of the motorcycle, and you know, that's my fault. That was a dumb. Just a little bit. That's way too much. I'm not even giving these one UGA yet. Oh, never mind. We'll give it one UGA. Okay. I don't know if this is, you can see this on camera. I kind of made up a little diagram of where everything came out of. Make this process a little more simple going back together. I should have probably looked at what the working time with this Honda Bond is. Didn't seem like it was very long though. It started to kind of tack up on my fingers. We have a little wire retainer for the hot lead running to the starter that goes under this bolt. Yeah, let me go ahead and just grab that now. Kind of makes sense too. This is the only one of these bolts that doesn't have a washer, but that's because this retainer acts as the washer. There's that. Okay, now we go ahead and get our little bolts torqued down. 8 foot-pounds. Well, I guess I just didn't even tighten this one down. I reckon you could probably get away with just going around the perimeter with these small guys since they're only 8 foot-pounds, but may as well go in sequence. My brain doesn't really want to do it any other way. Oh yeah, that's nice. We got a little bit of squeeze out now between the primary and secondary shafts in the transmission. Perfect. That's what we want to see. Yeah, this looks so nice, man. I'm so excited to have this bike back on the road. Oh yeah, dude, that's snugging down nice. I'm seeing just a little bit of squeeze out around the whole perimeter of these case halves. And that's perfect. That's what I want to see. Do a little perimeter check, one last perimeter check. Before we flip this thing over and put the last 2 bolts in. There are 2 bolts in the top. We'll let all that Honda Bond cure in between the case halves and then come back and just recheck torque, make sure nothing's gotten out of whack or whatever. And then from there, it's time to just start slapping this thing back together. Just a tiny little dab of anti-seize on the threads here. Same with all the others. And then also, like all the others, torque spec is still 8 foot-pounds. Yuppie. Yuppie. Cool. So I'm thinking we go ahead and put the starter motor back in and take care of our electronic side of the engine, and then we can deal with clutch and the whole rotating assembly stuff. Just a little bit, a smearable amount, you know what I mean? Hey, there we are right there. I gotta clean my hands. They're too dirty to touch nice clean gaskets. But I have my gaskets in front of my new hardware. I wasn't gonna do this, but I went ahead and got new stainless hardware from Common Motor. It looks nice. The JIS stuff, any of the crosspoint stuff on here, just a pain to deal with. So yeah, this will fix all that, all hex stuff, Allen stuff. Again, same thing as I did with the case halves. Diagrams, man. Nice to have rough shape of what the stuff looks like, and I don't know, hard to mess it up. But I'll try. And again, I'm gonna go in with a little bit of anti-seize on most things here. Not much. I mean, look, this is, you don't need much more than that. Because as you turn this thing into place, it'll smear that anti-seize throughout those threads nicely. I don't want this stuff just gooping out of there, he says, as he puts way too much on the next one. Why am I using standard Allens when I know these are metric? Well, we'll just snuggle them down real quick. And then get the right ones. 5mm. Yep. Boop. Boop. That's it, man. Starter's on there. Turn this guy around a little bit. And we'll deal with the easy side. Oh no, oh no. Yeah, so we don't have much flex in this chain. So what I'm gonna do is pull the starter motor back out and get the cog in place, and then kind of slide the starter into the cog, and the whole thing should line up. Woo. Okay, there's the whole thing out, but I don't want it all the way out. I think we can get away with having it in there just a little bit. Yeah, much better. So now with that in place, we can slide the starter back into its place. Before I tighten that down, just want to make sure all the rest of this is going to fit in here without any kind of clearance issues. Yeah, it certainly looks like it will. I think we'll be just fine. Okay. Yeah, so the issue that I had is with the chain wrapped around the starting sprocket, the starter motor sprocket was kind of too wide to even fit onto the splines. So pulling that starter out and then sliding the starter into the splines with the sprocket already in place let us get all of this together. Yeah, even with the starter in place, like I can't get the gear off of there now. I'm not gonna try real hard, but there's just not enough give in this short little run of chain. So y'all take note of this. If you pull your starter out, but your side cover is still on, this gear is absolutely gonna just fall down in here. Just like that. Now, our gear is held in place nicely. Oh, there it goes. Okay, that's it. This gasket doesn't fit as well as I would like for it to. Okay. We're just snugging all these up. You don't have to go crazy tight on these things. We don't want this stator rubbing on any part of the rotor. Feels like it's free. That's good news. I think during reassembly, I am gonna go ahead and put the stator cover back on here, but I'm not gonna put a gasket in here. I just wanna kind of keep trash out of this thing. Of course, it's gonna have to come right back off when we time it, but that's fine. We're not doing O-rings on here or anything yet. Just kind of loose. But that's gonna look good, dude. I remember pulling this thing out of the bike, knocking the first bit of dirt off of here and just kind of daydreaming about how nice it was gonna look. Is that everything on this side? Just about. We need to tidy up our wiring. And in fact, let's just go ahead and do that now. Just about. Come on. There you are. Okay. That's there. That's out of the way. Get that and go ahead and plug our neutral position indicator wire back in. Good to go now. All right, let's flip this thing around and start working on the clutch side of things. Just like that. We've still got our washer on there. That's nice. Next thing, shifter shaft. Just a little bit of oil in there. It's not gonna do a whole lot, but be nice to have it. Off camera also, the oil seal for the other side of the shifter shaft here, I went ahead and replaced it, and it is sitting there full of oil right now, so we're not concerned about that. Okay. Yep. I need to put this washer back in here. I don't want to lock this guy into place back there as well. I feel a little bit of grit. Okay. Washer's in place. Here's something kind of important. So each of our primary gears have a machined flat surface and then a raised surface. The flat surfaces, they're both the same, right? They both have flat surfaces and then raised surfaces. One machined flat surface goes towards the crankshaft, and then one machined flat surface goes towards the oil filter. And because this is a K3, our gears are all offset by half a tooth on the clutch basket and the primary drive gears. So we're gonna put this gear on first, then we can slide the clutch basket on here with the oil pump, put our second primary drive gear, and then oil filter and all that. You know the drill. Let me get me a little ultra slick on the back of this just to stick this gasket in place while I'm moving everything around. Cool. That'll hold. This is kind of a weird order of operations because of our offset gears here, but we should be able to just slide everything right into place. Try not to move this oil pump gasket while I go. There we go. Right there. Hold, please. We'll go ahead and pin our oil pump in place just to make sure this gasket doesn't walk away on us. Make sure I don't have any kind of dust or debris between these gears. These are like really flat, machined flat surfaces. Nice. Ooh. Same thing on this side, make sure everything is clean. And then boom, dude, just like that. We're gonna go ahead and get this oil pump torque down. So Honda doesn't have a prescribed torque spec for these guys specifically, but we're just gonna use logic since these are 10mm headed bolts like what we just put in around the case halves. And we'll go with 8 foot-pounds. Because why not? Same thread pitch, same bolt size. I mean, they're a little bit shorter than all the case bolts, but you know, thread pitch is the same and that's all that really matters. Nothing crazy, just a little bit, you know, wet her down. Okay, there we go, there's that. Yeah, now we just need our snap ring in place. So I'm making sure that the ears of the snap ring both kind of land on a spline rather than having them split a spline. If that makes any sense at all. Here, I'll show you what I mean. So the ears are basically, they both land on a spline instead of being kind of one step over where that gap between the two ears lands like just barely on a spline on either side. Okay, dude, let's get this clutch packed. I'm going back in here with the original clutch discs. One, because I'm cheap, but two, they are very well within spec. Also, I'm going to make note of these little expansion dealies here and stagger them by one tooth. you can see them in there, so it's pretty easy to do. But we're just gonna rotate by one tooth every time. I'll remind you guys, this is a bike with 3,000 miles on it. So honestly, not really at all surprising that the clutch discs are still in good shape. When I got the bike, the whole clutch package was frozen, and it is kind of surprising that when this came apart, I didn't break any of my clutch discs. I just, you know, kind of assumed they would shatter, but they didn't. They're all intact. That is the clutch packed. Now we've got our clutch lifter. No, tap it? That still doesn't sound right. Alrighty. Nice. A little more goop. Woo! Yes, sir. Perfect. Okay. Oil pump. No. Oil filter. Yes. Do. Come on. And then washer. Yeah. The little locky circle. Yeah. And the newt. All right. Let's lock that guy down. We're going to 21 foot-pounds. Yes! Folding some ears into place. There we are. That's it, man. All there is to it. I'm gonna make sure that the cap fits. It does, dude. That fits in there so nicely. Cool. All right. Done. Ish. Well, kinda. And we got actually a lot to do still. Pause for a second. We're back out here in the cave. Welcome back. It's been a minute. Doesn't feel nice out here. I've kind of come to enjoy the air conditioning a lot. The reason we're out here is because we're getting pretty close to starting to reassemble the top end of this engine, but there are a couple of things that I've got to do still before we can do that. First thing I've got to do is lap my valves. I haven't done that yet. They're pretty clean, as cleaned up as they're going to be. They're not perfect, but they don't need to be. But I do need the valve seats to be perfect. So we need to lap our valves, and then I also have to check my ring end gap before I go and reassemble the pistons. I don't know for sure that they are clearanced. I kind of doubt they are. I always check rings anyway. So we're going to go ahead and just do that now, and then we can start slapping together the top end components of this engine and have the peace of mind that everything checks out, and at least that's not going to be the reason this thing tears itself apart. Okay? Okay. Let me get a blue Sharpie. You should fix the color on your screen because, yep, that's definitely blue. We'll start with fine compound and see how that does. The seats actually don't look super bad. The whole idea here is just to make absolutely sure that we've got a good solid seat. But we're not trying to knock off a bunch of rust or anything like that. You may have noticed also this is significantly more clean now than when you last saw it on the motorcycle. I got to thank my dad for that. I actually dropped these off with him. He's got access to tools that are way more capable of cleaning these things up way more efficiently than I am, and I basically dropped the whole top end off with him. So thanks, Dad. I know you're watching. I appreciate it very much. They look fantastic. Okay, let's grind. Mush. There might be a couple of y'all wondering, like, well, Cotton, why are you taking the time to do this? You know, the engine looks like crap, and the rest of the bike looks pretty dog shit. Honestly, the reason is, I don't care how the bike looks nearly as much as I care about how it functions. And I want this bike functionally to be sound, solid as a rock. The outside stuff, I don't know, it's kind of subjective, right? What looks good, what doesn't look good, who knows, man. Ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. But there are goes and no-goes inside the engine that actually affect the objective longevity of the engine's life, and those are the things that I'm concerned with. So hence why we're lapping valves. We want these guys to seal back up nicely. But I'm not doing, you know, I'm not putting new valves in. Doesn't need new valves. I'm perfectly comfortable with, if these turn out the way that, you know, they should, we don't need new valves. It's just not necessary. We don't need new guides, you know, if everything is within spec. I told y'all earlier, I've gone through this engine. I wasn't joking. Like, I went through the engine with a micrometer, a set of calipers, and multiple sizes of dial bore gauge, and just checked specs on everything. And I do mean everything. Oh, also on feeler gauges too, because that's the important stuff. Cosmetically, you can do this or that or the other or whatever, but functionally, there's kind of an objective right and wrong, at least for some stuff. When you get down into the, you know, granular bits and pieces, gets a little more muddy. But if we're this far into the engine, I say we, if anyone is this far into an engine, you should just lap your valves. Kind of objectively the right thing to do. You should check your ring end gap on your pistons if you're putting new pistons and rings in, or just new rings or whatever. Even if you've just pulled your jug off and you're honing out your cylinders, check everything. The cool thing is, though, a lot of stuff like this is simple enough that anybody can do it at home. I mean, i.e., here we are. I'm at home doing this stuff. And it's just not, it's not complicated. It's time consuming. And I understand maybe some of you guys watching haven't done this before, you know? And in fact, I would venture to guess that most of you probably haven't done this before. But in that same vein, I reckon most of you are interested in doing it, and to that I say, do it. Why not? And spin, and we're spinning, and we're spinning. Yeah, just do it, man. Start with something simple. Start with a lawnmower engine or something, you know? Something that if you messed it up, there's 1,000 more for $10, you know, or free. Just right around where you live. But it's not complicated. It just takes time. You do develop a skill set for it, though. You know, the feel and stuff. There's no way to convey on camera, or even if you're standing right here next to me, there's not really any way to convey feel of correct. The feel of, you know, this is the proper torque or whatever, besides just torquing something to spec and handing you the wrench and saying, here, feel what that feels like. But even then, that only does so much. You've just got to do it. All right, let's get all of this stuff cleaned up now. That's all of our valves seated. Actually, I want to go back in with this first valve one more time, because I don't quite like how narrow the seat is. Right now, you could see a line that's just kind of thin. So I want to give this a couple more revolutions in here with some lapping compound on there again, and try and widen out that contact patch just a little bit more. I'm just not quite happy with it yet. If they all looked like that, it would be fine, but they don't. The other 3 valves have a wider contact patch. And I know that that's because I only gave this guy 1 cycle. But the good news is I don't have to go and check this with a Sharpie when I'm done, because I already know that we're sealing. Our 2 surfaces are mated perfectly, essentially. So now what I'm doing is taking that mating surface and just making it a little bit wider. That's all. I was pretty careful not to get any lapping compound down in the ports. up in the ports. I guess we're upside down right now. What is it, up in the ports? Anyway, in the ports. So cleanup's kind of a breeze. Do the same thing, wipe off our valves. Next step for the head is gonna be reinstalling the valves at this point, but we'll do that back inside the house. Now then, ring end gap. Let's do that next. Y'all wanna see how good these cylinders look, man? Keep in mind, this was a locked up engine. Oh, look at this. Can you see? I mean, just... Come on, dude. They look so nice, dude. Fine measuring toolage. This is really straightforward. So we're gonna check our compression ring and we're gonna check our intermediate ring. We don't need to check the oil scraper group of rings because those are kind of loose. All they do is control how much oil is left on the cylinder wall. They're loose anyway, but we're gonna check compression and check intermediate, and it's really, really simple. With our upside pointed up, we have a little marker here that indicates that this is our upward facing direction. We're gonna just squeeze this together a little bit and stick it down, I don't know, maybe an inch into the cylinder or so. And then this is, look, this is, watch, this is all there is to it. You just whoop, just like that. Got our old piston here, just to make this parallel with the top surface of our cylinder here. And we're just gonna push this down just a little bit. Maybe give it a little rotation, make sure it's all nice and parallel. It's not perfect, but it just needs to be, you know, really close. And with that there, we have a gap. Where those two ends of the rings meet each other, that gap is what we are checking. We've got an 8 thousandths feeler gauge and a 16 thousandths feeler gauge. Honda says we're allowed 8 to 16 thousandths of gap. I'm guessing it's going to be closer to 8 than 16. Hopefully it's, if the 16 goes in, we've got a problem. But if anything, we should have to file these rings to fit, not add material back. I don't know. So let's see. Here's our 8 thou. Oh yeah, 8 thou fits in there nicely. 16 definitely does not. Cool. Yep. 8 thousandths. Good to go. We'll leave these two out and then we just boop, slide the ring back up like that. And then right back out. Just like that. Don't worry about getting, you know, little marks and stuff on your cylinder walls. It doesn't matter. They're all cross-hatched anyway. You're not going to hurt the cylinder walls doing this. Just, you know, be gentle with it. Alright, same thing. This is our upside. So we'll mush the ring ends together carefully, put it down in there about an inch, and then just flip it towards ourselves. Just like that. Same thing, use the piston to just get everything kind of flat and parallel with the top of the cylinder. And recheck it. Well, that's a much tighter fit on that 8 thousandths. 9 thousandths has some drag, so that I would call that end gap probably 9 thousandths, somewhere between 9 and 10 thou. That's just fine. That's what we want to see. So same thing, rotate, slide it up and out. That's it. Those two rings are finished. Now, since we've got both cylinders here, it's just a twin. We'll go ahead, close this box up, and then we're going to mark this box with an L for left. Yeah. There we go. These rings were a little bit dry. We'll coat them in oil. I didn't really mention that, but the other set of rings was nice and covered in oil prior to going into the cylinder. There are tools that will align rings with cylinders. I don't have one. because I'm perfectly happy with just doing it like this. But you can buy that if it makes you more comfortable. Oh yeah, looks nice. We got a little bit of space, so we're probably sitting between a 11 and 13 thousandths or so of gap. Last one. There's a little like flat spot on the skirt of this piston. That's what I'm putting on the gap on both ends of that ring, just to push it all down evenly. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's another somewhere between 9 and 10 thousandths, so golden, dude. Cool, so that gives us peace of mind knowing that when this engine gets up to operating temperature, the ring end gap is not going to close before the ring itself is done expanding and thereby chewing up itself and the cylinder, potentially the piston, breaking stuff. It's a catastrophe when that happens. But now we know the likelihood of that happening is, well, basically zero. We'll mark this box right. And that's it. Now we need to get the valves back in the head and then we can start reassembling the top end. Transition. No? Alright, whatever. Let's get some pistons back in this guy. Right, let's go ahead and get these wrist pin circlips in place. Well, one for now. I've got an arrow on the top of the piston. The arrow's facing forward. And it's the same way on the old piston as well. Got a little arrow. But to be honest, even if you don't have the arrow, you can tell which way these go in because the intake valve is significantly bigger than the exhaust valve, and there's a relief cut for the intake valve and the exhaust. So you can't really put them in wrong. I mean, I guess you could, but you'd really have to try. Turns out oil's really good at sticking to the surface of parts. So it doesn't take much. You don't have to make a huge mess to get everything really thoroughly coated, actually. I think I'll go ahead and just rotate a little bit. There we go. Easy peasy lemon. I might have mentioned this already. I've already got the small end of the connecting rod oiled up. Cool. There we go. Pistons done, dude. Those look so good. Now, circlips. And click, click. 1 and 2. These are already pretty well coated in engine oil. Oh, no. No, we're not fighting that battle again. I'm checking the scraper stack here because I do want those rings to be separate from one another, which they are. Cool, so let's just pull this guy kind of over here. I'm splitting the difference a little bit, basically, with the compression ring and the intermediate ring. So we'll go there-ish. Look, fellas. These are going to start turning as soon as you fire your engine up, provided you don't have any burrs on the ring ends, which I don't, but they should start spinning immediately. Clock them if you want to, but they're immediately going to start rotating. It's really not that serious. This is pretty easy. We've just got to make sure, like make damn sure, that we don't pull those little vibration dampeners out of place when we go and put the tensioner back into its tensioning position. Biggest thing I'm trying to fight here is the I'm kind of fighting this stupid cam chain tensioner, man. It's just trying to wander away a little bit. You really shouldn't have to force anything here. It'll kind of go, or it won't. Over? Yeah. Okay, down we go. We might have to get after this with a nope, never mind. Okay, it went right down onto the dowels. I was thinking we might have had to tap this thing down onto the dowels with a hammer. But no, okay. Get past the threads. Boom. Well, I'll tell you what, we sure have come a long way from this thing looking like this to this. Look how shiny, man. These are the same cylinders, just honed out. The only thing different here is the piston assembly. But this engine was locked up, man. Just locked up solid. Y'all watched me unstick the thing. And look at it now. It just looks so great. I'm thrilled with this. I've got to get my valves back in the head, and then we'll get the head and everything else on here, the cam and rockers and all that good stuff, man. That's right around the corner.